today I have the privilege of speaking with Eric S. Garcia and Leo Chu about their upcoming Disney Plus series, Ultraviolet and BlackScorpion, which I got a chance to watch a couple episodes, and I'm very excited for the rest of the world to see it. So hello.
Hey.
Hello.
Well, let's start off with tell us a little bit about what people can expect from the series.
Well, I think you can expect, a lot of family entertainment. I mean, when we set out to make the show, we very much wanted to make something that was for the entire family to enjoy. When I was a kid, some of my best memories, actually all of my best memories of my family growing up were watching TV and movies. Something occurred to me, which is that, in movies, they're always creating like these broad entertainments for people, like especially at Disney, like Pixar movies or like the Harry Potter films or whatever. It's like really for everybody. But in television, everything is very, very, I would say, kind of bifurcated or segmented, like in the little demos. And what we did not want to make was like a show just for kids. It's really something for everyone. And so there's a lot of action, there's a lot of comedy. It's like a superhero adventure, but it also dips very much into Lucha Libre culture and Mexican American culture. Maybe Eric can talk more about that.
Well, the one thing I will add just on top of that before I get into the Lucha Libre is it's just that it's a nice YA. You know what I mean? It's just like it has real issues of a real, kids growing up. And, you know what I mean? Set in this superhero context. So, I think the marriage of all these things is a language that, fans will like and, people will understand. And as far as the Lucha Libre, I mean, that's just like a great part of the inspiration of the show. It's a central part of their heroism. And, we're big fans of Mexican culture, from ancient times to through the 20th century, where Lucha Libre really got its start. We love the idea of the masks as a kind of a unique way to bring supernatural powers. And, it's a throwback to the ancient Mexico, when, they were dressed in their costumes for their rituals and whatnot. And those masks were very much a part of that culture. You know what I mean? And the Nobel laureate Octavio Paz even writes a chapter in Labyrinth of Solitude called Mexican Masks. So, there's a deep history of it. And we love just making it entertaining and fun, in a way that we understand it today.
So it's really interesting, the Lucha Libre aspect of it, because of the fact that I grew up with here in the United States, of course. But, when my superheroes were like, obviously Batman, but also it was El Hijo del Santo. It was Pentagon. It was because my dad showed me these things, and he was very proud to show me how in Mexico, it's not like your WWE AEW type of wrestlers there. There's a lot more tradition to it. There's rules. There's, it is just part of the culture of, what makes like Mexico City, for example, where it's very, very predominant. What did you guys background maybe on actual, Lucha Libre, and maybe your experience in watching it, maybe, or even seeing it live?
You know what? My brother and I were big wrestling fans. And then I got introduced to Lucha Libre when I was quite young by my uncle Jesse. He's my dad's friend. He's not actually like a blood uncle, we call him, you know what I mean? He's like,
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah. So, he's Mexican American, and he's the one who kind of turned me on to it, because we were so into like wrestling. And he's like, oh, you guys have to see this. And I was like, oh my God, it was mind blowing, because I think the moves are so much more acrobatic in a way. And the choreography is like super intense. And there's also like just the language of it. And that's sort of what Eric, I think, was alluding to, is like the language kind of dovetails and sort of elevates superhero language. And I think in kind of bringing those things together, we wanted to create something that was really unique in the superhero world, but also something that was uniquely Mexican American. And right, like there's masks, there's powers, there's also something like that in the superhero world. But, like in Lucha Libre, and this might be for, people who don't know, or people who do know, this will be very rudimentary. But, in the show, we actually have to explain it, because not everybody knows this, that there are technicos, which are people who play by the rules and essentially are good guys. And there are rudos, who are people who like break the rules or essentially you're bad guys. right? And so suddenly you have like a world of heroes and villains essentially, and then we have this girl who gets her mask for the first time, and she has superpowers for the first time, and she maybe is breaking a few rules, and so she's kind of darting between those two while her uncle is trying to get her onto the path of the Technicos and not the Rudos.
And I think what's great about it is like, for all of us actually, but for the young audience, it is about like, the stories are about, what it's like growing up. So it's those moral dilemmas, wanting to use these powers for yourself, you know what I mean? Or for, for the good of your city and stuff like that. And so there's a little bit of the tension in that. And so, we've definitely taken, a license, because this isn't like, we're not in Mexico City, we're in Los Angeles, right? And it takes place in Los Angeles. It's like, and it's not just all, lucha, heroes, but how it's translated into kind of a relatable life, with their family and her and her friends and her uncle who's training and stuff like that, and what it's like in his gym.
Right. Well, it's funny you say that because, we have, on the show, we have like an all Latinx cast, and we have a majority Latinx writers room, which is kind of hard to come by, I think, in Hollywood. And we got into a lot of debates, and just for myself in education, about just the difference between like Mexican culture, Mexican American culture, right? Because like people from Mexico, like we had, our parents would call like their kids like mija or mijo, right? Which I think is very common in Mexican American culture. But like people who are like from Mexico are like, oh, we never say that. Like that's wrong. And we're like, well, it's not wrong. It's just like not in your culture. It's like there's like subtle, like there's differences and stuff, which I thought was very interesting.
Oh yeah, there's even just subtle differences in the way you talk or describe different things, and you'd be pointed out immediately one way or the other.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just about where you're growing up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think
it's interesting. America is like this amazing place of like, we have the sheer numbers of the Latinx, groupings, There's some, more Cuban, Dominican, Puerto Rican in different areas, Mexican American and stuff like that. So, we want to be inclusive, of the entire Latinx audience, but at the same time, it's just like acknowledge that the roots really are kind of like, from Mexico, from Lucha, but that it's like really a Mexican American, world, in Los Angeles, and how kind of like the Latinx identity is becoming shaped like through all of these influences and taking pride in it and having like the heroism, by having our lucha superheroes.
Yeah, and the show is really a testimony to that. We're going to see Violet really learn about all the traditional ways, with at the same time trying to, pave her own path and mix it all together. And I think that's really one of the biggest things I understood really from the first episode is kind of the blending of the both. And I think that's really where you guys really captured that magic of for all ages, because the older people will be able to really relate to the adults, and then same thing with the kids. I mean, just a perfect example is she's so enamored with the idea of showing her face and or making sure that she has that clout, and things like that. And it's something that for some of us that are a little older, it's not as important, but for young impressionable kids, it means everything.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's really everything.
Yeah.
And it's like the complete opposite of what you do as a Lucha Libre wrestler, right? Like the whole, like you're not supposed to show your face or unmask yourself.
Yeah, and then part of that also is because a luchador, their power, their identity as a fighter is through that mask. So I mean, just really big kudos to you guys to really putting it all together, because some might say, yeah, it's just a kid show and everything, but when you really think about it and break it all down, you guys really did your homework. Of course, I mean, you guys did Afro Samurai, so it's of course. And really bringing the show that I think as a long time coming. I've always thought to myself, why don't, if we're trying to showcase Latin culture, especially Mexican culture, for me it was always like, why don't we showcase like luchadors more, because they're such a big part of our traditions. That it would just seem natural fit with how popular superheroes are and everything, that they're showcased a little bit more.
100%. And it's also something that it's like, it's interesting when you see things in culture and in life. We've been starting to see these masks, come up on, like on drinks, and then just like, but also just like, well, I mean, it's just like it's something that needs to be explored.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's something kind of mystical and cool. And and we want that next new thing. We want to embrace like the Mexican side, you know what I mean, of America.
Yeah, and blow it up. I think it's it's funny. Eric and I always talk about when we choose our projects, I think we kind of do the opposite of what a lot of people do, which is like, oh, what's out there? Like we kind of look at what's not out there, and we're like, oh, what's not out there? And we always try to bring something new into the world, because I think that's the only way that you can really change it or move the needle, if that, makes any sense. And for us, I think the opportunity with this project was really to kind of create Disney's first Latinx superhero series and its first Latina superhero. Like that's kind of a huge deal, like the company hasn't done that before. So we're very hopeful, we're very happy it's on Disney Plus, because Disney Plus,
proud to have worked on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just like, it's just like that, that we had the budget that we have. I mean, everything is like tough, but it's like, but we did some cool stuff. You know what I mean? And then there's a lot of cool looking things in there. So
yeah, let's talk a little bit about the aesthetic of it. Is that really what you guys were going for? Kind of like that comic book feel also, because we see some of the pals and some of the those cartoon graphics that come in between, and then it's just really also bright and very very quick paced as well.
Well, so, you know what? We are very much like influenced by anime. You know what I mean? It's just like something. So it's like, so we were calling this around, and we were calling it Lucha Libre. Because it's just like, and one of our other touchdowns is Scott Pilgrim. You know what I mean? It's just fun, just about what you can do graphically on the screen, what you can do with like the panels, which are not exactly comic book panels, but just like paneling, you know what I mean? And how, instead of using a wipe, we like to use a push. So it's like the frame is pushed out versus just like wiped over, you know what I mean? Things like that. And so, those are all part of the creative process of it coming together and to kind of give it like a fun look, but also kind of a fresh and unique look to it.
Yeah, it's sort of, I think it's once again, when we're talking about how you kind of take these languages and kind of create a new language. If you're taking superheroes and Lucha Libre, like Eric was saying, like Scott Pilgrim kind of takes anime and video games. And so we're like, well, what if we took anime and like Lucha Libre with the superhero together to kind of create like a feel and a language for the show? And like the pal, I mean, look, I'm a huge Batman 66 fan. Since I was a little kid, I used to rush home from school and watch it on reruns and television, like that sort of thing. And they had a lot of big pals and bands, but we didn't want to literally write pal because that seems maybe a little campy. But we're like, oh, what's the cooler way to do it? And so our pals and our hits and all that sort of stuff, they have they're sort of homages to sort of vintage Lucha Libre posters. It has like the Ben Day dots, that's all those little dots in the graphics and the printing and stuff, where they kind of blossom out, and they're sort of drawn from those as an artistic inspiration.
And it's interesting, you remarked on the fast pace of it. It's just like, I feel like, we wanted it to really be an action comedy. And it's just like, we felt like we like a lot of story. And so in order to do that, you also, it kind of was like a natural consequence of it. And it's interesting because I think that there were some really great dramatic moments. And there are great dramatic moments in there, you know what I mean, of connections between, especially, Cruz and Violet. But I think that, and where we can, we let those play a lot, you know what I mean, as much as we can. There's probably more of it, you know what I mean? But it's like, at a certain point, it's like, well, this isn't a 1 hour drama. It's not a movie, you know what I mean? It's still a half-hour show. And so, you know what I mean? We have our constraints, you know what I mean? And that was like, we're happy to adapt to that. And, we wanted a snappy show that you sit down and kind of watch and just be like, this is fun. That was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's one thing the show is, it is definitely fun. One final question before I'll let you guys go. What makes Scarlett Estevez the perfect Violet for the series?
I think there's a lot of things that make her perfect for the series. I think that we watch these cuts 1,000 times, and when she's in the mask, she sounds different to me. You know what I mean? She's like is different. You know what I mean? There's like a freedom that she has I think just as an actress, as a young actress, she's amazing because she is very free and she is, is so natural on camera. And I love, the subtleties in her expression, are amazing. But, I think there's a lot of things. And I think that, she's been a great influence. And, a lot of people have learned from her, other cast members. I've even said so about, it's just like, wow, she's really kind of
like
amazing.
adult cast members.
Adult cast members. Like, she's incredible.
Yeah.
And I think that she's also your every girl. She's relatable. She's not like, I mean, just, super cute, but just relatable in the sense of like, yeah, okay, that could be me. That could be a friend of mine. That could be like, a daughter or something like that without something. And yet there's something about her that is so vibrant and so clear and communicates.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So well. And I mean her, but also Cruz is amazing too. I mean, it's like we couldn't have been happier with somebody like him because he's a really tremendous actor, but also at the one time he is both serious, manly. When he picks up somebody, you believe it. You know what I mean? You believe that he's a luchador, and then the other part of him is like that he has a childlike side. You know what I mean? And that he is like a big kid and even immature. You know what I mean? Sometimes, and I think that that's a great recipe for comedy.
I mean, I think that's really the key to the show is those two, right? It's a buddy comedy at the core between an uncle and his niece. And the uncle is supposed to be guiding his niece, who's like exuberant and gung-ho and maybe overly cheerful by his standards. And the uncle is like cranky and rule bound, but also he can get down and get as immature as she can.
Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate speaking with you regarding the series. Also, thank you for the show. Like I said, it means a lot to me to see this kind of content go up, especially that are gonna highlight some of our traditions, and at the same time just keep it going, keep the kids thinking that our traditions are great and everything, but we're here to pave our own ways, but at the same time remembering our past. So
yeah,
great.
That's a perfect sum up. Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's just about having fun. I know I find all these things in it, but at the same time, it's just fun.
It's fun.
All right.
Cool.
Thanks again.
Emmanuel, thank you so much.
Such a pleasure to meet you.
Take care.